Question 1. What factors determine the most effective and ethically sound approach to promoting employee engagement and morale through social media within a public relations context, adhering strictly to UK regulatory frameworks and CISI guidelines? Option A. The encouragement of employees to share personal opinions and experiences on company-branded social media channels without clear guidelines or moderation. Option B. The public broadcasting of individual employee achievements on external social media platforms without explicit, informed consent. Option C. The use of social media primarily for mandatory company announcements and performance feedback. Option D. The strategic use of internal social media platforms for celebrating team achievements and facilitating peer-to-peer recognition. The correct answer is D. The strategic use of internal social media platforms for celebrating team achievements and facilitating peer-to-peer recognition. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because fostering genuine employee engagement and morale through social media requires a delicate balance. Organizations must leverage these platforms to build community and recognize contributions without crossing into areas that could be perceived as intrusive, manipulative, or that violate privacy expectations. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efforts are authentic, respectful, and aligned with company culture, and any applicable regulations concerning employee communications and data privacy. The correct approach involves strategically using internal social media platforms or designated company channels to share positive news, celebrate team achievements, and facilitate peer-to-peer recognition. This approach is best professional practice because it creates a controlled environment where the organization can ensure content is appropriate and aligns with its values. Ethically, it respects employee privacy by focusing on publicly shared achievements or team-based successes rather than individual, potentially sensitive information. From a regulatory standpoint, using internal platforms minimizes risks associated with external platform terms of service. Data privacy laws, like GDPR if applicable to the jurisdiction, or similar local regulations, and potential for misinformation or misuse of company-related content. It also ensures that communications are directed towards employees and are less likely to be misinterpreted by external audiences. An approach that focuses on publicly broadcasting individual employee achievements on external social media platforms without explicit, informed consent is professionally unacceptable. This fails ethically by potentially violating an employee's right to privacy and could lead to unwanted attention or professional repercussions for the employee. It also carries regulatory risks related to data protection and the unauthorized use of an individual's likeness or personal information. Another incorrect approach is to use social media primarily for mandatory company announcements and performance feedback. This is professionally unacceptable because it misinterprets the purpose of social media for engagement, turning it into a one-way communication channel that can feel impersonal and even punitive. Ethically, it fails to foster a sense of community or positive reinforcement, which are key to morale. It also misses the opportunity to build genuine connections and can lead to disengagement rather than the intended outcome. Finally, an approach that encourages employees to share personal opinions and experiences on company-branded social media channels without clear guidelines or moderation is professionally unacceptable. This is ethically problematic as it opens the door to inappropriate content, potential reputational damage for the company, and could inadvertently pressure employees to share more than they are comfortable with. It also poses significant regulatory risks, as the company could be held liable for content posted by employees on its behalf, especially if it violates advertising standards, defamation laws, or other communication regulations. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes authenticity, transparency, and respect for employee privacy. This involves clearly defining the purpose and scope of social media use for employee engagement, establishing clear content guidelines, and utilizing platforms that are appropriate for the intended audience and message. Regular review of engagement strategies and feedback mechanisms are crucial to ensure that efforts are effective and ethically sound. Question 2. Operational review demonstrates a significant increase in engagement metrics on recent company Twitter posts, including a surge in replies and retweets concerning a new product launch. The public relations team is eager to leverage this heightened interest to further boost visibility. However, a junior analyst has flagged that some of the replies contain speculative discussions about the product's future market impact and potential unannounced features. Considering the U.S. regulatory framework for public communications, which approach to analyzing these Twitter analytics is most critical for ensuring compliance. Option A. Attribute the speculative replies to organic user discussion and dismiss them as noise, concentrating solely on the overall positive sentiment of the engagement. Option B. Prioritize identifying any engagement patterns that might indicate the dissemination of material non-public information or constitute an unauthorized promotion, and escalate for legal review. Option C. Focus on optimizing future content to further amplify engagement, assuming that high interaction inherently signifies positive and compliant communication. Option D. Rely on Twitter's internal moderation tools to automatically flag any content that violates platform policies, thereby ensuring regulatory compliance. The correct answer is B. Prioritize identifying any engagement patterns that might indicate the dissemination of material non-public information or constitute an unauthorized promotion, and escalate for legal review. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations professional to interpret social media analytics not just for performance tracking, but also to ensure compliance with regulatory frameworks governing public communications, particularly concerning financial promotions or material non-public information. The pressure to demonstrate immediate engagement growth can lead to overlooking critical disclosure requirements. The correct approach involves prioritizing the identification of potential regulatory breaches within the analytics data. This is because the primary ethical and legal obligation for public relations professional, especially in a regulated environment, is to ensure all communications adhere to relevant laws and guidelines. In the U.S. context, this would include SEC regulations, e.g., Regulation FD, and FINRA rules if dealing with financial services. The analysis must focus on whether engagement metrics, such as shares or replies, indicate the dissemination of information that could be construed as a promotion or the release of material non-public information without proper safeguards or disclosures. The goal is to proactively identify and mitigate risks before they escalate into compliance issues. An approach that focuses solely on maximizing engagement metrics without a concurrent regulatory risk assessment is incorrect. This fails to uphold the professional duty of care and could lead to violations of regulations designed to protect investors and maintain market integrity. For instance, if high engagement on a tweet discussing a company's performance is driven by speculation or unverified claims, this could constitute a violation of disclosure rules. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss unusual engagement patterns as mere algorithmic fluctuations without further investigation. Regulatory bodies often scrutinize unexpected spikes in interest or discussion, especially if they correlate with significant company events. Failing to investigate these patterns could mean missing a critical indicator of a potential compliance issue, such as the unauthorized disclosure of sensitive information. Finally, an approach that relies on the assumption that Twitter's platform automatically flags or prevents regulatory breaches is also flawed. While platforms have community guidelines, they are not a substitute for a public relations professional's direct responsibility to understand and apply specific legal and regulatory requirements relevant to their organization's communications. The professional decision-making process should involve a layered analysis. First, assess the engagement data for any indicators of potential regulatory concern. This includes looking at the nature of the content, the audience engagement, and any correlation with company news. Second, if potential concerns are identified, immediately consult the organization's legal and compliance departments. Third, prioritize regulatory compliance over short-term engagement gains. This framework ensures that public relations activities are not only effective in building relationships, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 3. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a public relations team is developing a social media strategy for a new product launch on Facebook. They are considering how to best ensure their launch announcement reaches the target demographic effectively. Which of the following approaches best aligns with current understanding of the Facebook algorithm and ethical public relations practices for content distribution? Option A. Rely exclusively on paid advertising to ensure maximum reach, disregarding organic engagement metrics as secondary to paid impressions. Option B. Prioritize content that is highly engaging, encourages meaningful comments and shares, and is likely to be seen as relevant by the target audience, supplemented by strategic paid promotion to amplify high-performing organic posts. Option C. Focus on maximizing the sheer volume of posts published daily, utilizing a wide array of trending but potentially irrelevant hashtags to increase discoverability. Option D. Employ clickbait headlines and sensationalized imagery to drive immediate traffic, assuming the algorithm will favor high click-through rates regardless of content substance. The correct answer is B. Prioritize content that is highly engaging, encourages meaningful comments and shares, and is likely to be seen as relevant by the target audience, supplemented by strategic paid promotion to amplify high-performing organic posts. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because public relations practitioners must navigate the complex and ever-changing landscape of social media algorithms to effectively distribute content. Misunderstanding or misapplying knowledge of how platforms like Facebook prioritize and display content can lead to significant reputational damage, wasted resources, and failure to achieve communication objectives. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for broad reach with the ethical imperative to provide valuable and relevant information to the target audience, all while operating within the platform's evolving rules and user expectations. The correct approach involves a nuanced understanding of the Facebook algorithm's core principles, focusing on engagement signals and audience relevance. This approach recognizes that the algorithm is designed to show users content they are most likely to interact with, based on past behavior and relationships. Therefore, prioritizing content that genuinely resonates with the target audience encourages meaningful interactions, comments, shares, reactions, and is shared by trusted sources within the audience's network is crucial. This aligns with ethical PR practices of transparency and audience-centric communication, ensuring that messages are delivered effectively without resorting to manipulative tactics. It also implicitly adheres to guidelines that promote authentic engagement and discourage artificial amplification, which could be seen as misleading. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing reach through paid promotion, without considering organic engagement signals, fails to leverage the algorithm's intent. This can lead to a perception of inauthenticity and may result in lower organic reach over time, as the algorithm deprioritizes content that doesn't foster genuine interaction. Ethically, it prioritizes visibility over value, potentially alienating the audience. Another incorrect approach that relies heavily on posting frequency without regard for content quality or audience interest ignores the algorithm's emphasis on engagement. While frequent posting might increase the chance of content being seen, if that content is not engaging, it will likely be ignored by the algorithm and users alike, leading to wasted effort and a diluted brand message. This approach lacks strategic depth and can be perceived as spammy. A third incorrect approach that attempts to game the algorithm by using trending but irrelevant hashtags or misleading clickbait titles is ethically unsound and likely to backfire. The algorithm is designed to detect such manipulative tactics, and users are increasingly adept at identifying and disengaging from them. This can lead to a significant loss of trust and credibility, directly harming the organization's reputation. The professional decision-making process should involve continuous learning about platform updates, analyzing audience behavior and engagement metrics, and prioritizing content creation that is genuinely valuable and encourages authentic interaction. This means understanding that the algorithm is a tool to facilitate connection, not a loophole to exploit. A PR professional should always ask, does this content serve our audience and foster genuine engagement, or am I simply trying to manipulate visibility? Question 4. The audit findings indicate that a recent paid Twitter advertising campaign for a new client product failed to clearly distinguish between organic posts and sponsored content, and some ad copy contained aspirational language that could be interpreted as unsubstantiated claims. Which of the following approaches best addresses these audit findings and ensures future compliance with public relations certification standards for social media advertising? Option A. Implement a mandatory pre-approval process for all paid Twitter content, ensuring clear promoted or ad labeling and verifying that all claims are substantiated and align with regulatory guidelines. Option B. Rely on the client's internal marketing team to manage all aspects of paid social media advertising, including disclosure and claim accuracy, to avoid direct responsibility. Option C. Update the company's social media policy to include a general statement about ethical advertising, without specific guidance on paid content disclosure or claim substantiation. Option D. Focus solely on optimizing ad targeting and bidding strategies to maximize reach and engagement, assuming that Twitter's platform policies adequately cover disclosure requirements. The correct answer is A. Implement a mandatory pre-approval process for all paid Twitter content, ensuring clear promoted or ad labeling and verifying that all claims are substantiated and align with regulatory guidelines. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the strategic goals of a paid Twitter advertising campaign with the imperative of adhering to specific advertising regulations and ethical considerations within the public relations certification framework. The public relations professional must ensure that all paid content is transparent, accurate, and does not mislead the audience, while also maximizing campaign effectiveness. Careful judgment is required to navigate the nuances of platform policies and regulatory expectations. The correct approach involves clearly disclosing the paid nature of the Twitter advertisement through appropriate platform features and explicit language, such as promoted or ad, and ensuring that the content itself is truthful and not deceptive. This aligns with the ethical principles of transparency and honesty fundamental to public relations, and is often mandated by advertising standards and platform policies designed to protect consumers from misleading advertising. An incorrect approach that fails to clearly label the advertisement as paid is ethically problematic, because it can mislead the audience into believing the content is organic or editorial, thereby undermining trust and potentially violating advertising regulations that require clear identification of sponsored content. Another incorrect approach that uses exaggerated or unsubstantiated claims in the advertisement is also a failure, as it violates principles of truthfulness and accuracy in communication, which are core to professional public relations practice and often subject to regulatory scrutiny for false advertising. Finally, an approach that focuses solely on engagement metrics without considering the regulatory compliance and ethical implications of the ad's content or its disclosure is professionally deficient, as it prioritizes short-term campaign success over long-term reputation and adherence to legal and ethical standards. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical integrity from the outset of campaign planning. This involves thoroughly understanding the specific advertising regulations applicable to the jurisdiction, the advertising policies of the platform, Twitter, and the ethical guidelines of their professional body. Before launching any paid campaign, a review process should be implemented to ensure all content is truthful, not misleading, and appropriately disclosed. When in doubt, seeking legal counsel or consulting with regulatory experts is advisable. Question 5. Stakeholder feedback indicates a need to launch a new public awareness campaign regarding a regulated industry product. Considering the diverse nature of social media platforms and the absolute priority of adhering strictly to the regulatory framework and laws of the United States, which approach to platform selection would be most professionally sound and compliant? Option A. Select platforms with the largest user bases and broadest reach, assuming that compliance can be managed through general best practices across all chosen channels. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of each potential platform's terms of service, content moderation policies, and specific regulatory compliance features relevant to the U.S., aligning platform choice with campaign objectives and target audience demographics. Option C. Prioritize platforms that allow for the most creative and engaging content formats, with a secondary consideration for audience demographics and regulatory adherence. Option D. Utilize platforms that are popular with younger demographics, as they are generally more receptive to new information and less likely to scrutinize regulatory details. The correct answer is A. Select platforms with the largest user bases and broadest reach, assuming that compliance can be managed through general best practices across all chosen channels. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because public relations practitioners must navigate the diverse landscapes of social media platforms while adhering to a complex web of regulations and ethical considerations specific to their jurisdiction. The challenge lies in selecting the most appropriate platform for a given campaign objective, considering not only audience reach, but also the platform's inherent characteristics, content moderation policies, and the legal implications of content dissemination. Careful judgment is required to ensure compliance and maximize campaign effectiveness without inadvertently violating any rules or ethical standards. The correct approach involves a strategic selection of social media platforms based on a thorough understanding of their user demographics, content formats, and the specific regulatory environment governing their use for public relations activities within the specified jurisdiction. This approach is right because it prioritizes compliance and effectiveness. For instance, if the jurisdiction has strict guidelines on financial promotion, a platform with robust advertising controls and clear disclaimers will be favored over one with less oversight. Ethical justification stems from transparency and responsible communication, ensuring that the chosen platform facilitates the delivery of accurate information to the intended audience in a manner that respects platform terms of service and relevant laws. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize reach or perceived popularity without considering the platform's suitability for the specific public relations objective or its regulatory implications. Example, using a platform known for rapid, unverified information sharing for a campaign requiring precise, regulated messaging could lead to misinformation and regulatory breaches. Another incorrect approach is to assume all platforms operate under the same rules, failing to research the specific terms of service and content policies of each platform can result in unintentional violations, such as copyright infringement or the promotion of prohibited content, leading to account suspension or legal repercussions. A third incorrect approach is to overlook the demographic alignment between the target audience and the platform's user base, resulting in an ineffective campaign and wasted resources, which, while not directly a regulatory failure, is a professional failing in strategic execution. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining campaign objectives and target audiences. This should be followed by a comprehensive research phase into available social media platforms, focusing on their features, user demographics, content policies, and crucially, their alignment with the relevant jurisdictional laws and regulations governing public relations and advertising. A risk assessment should then be conducted for each potential platform, evaluating potential compliance issues and ethical concerns. The final selection should be the platform that best balances strategic goals with regulatory adherence and ethical responsibility. Section 6. Quality control measures reveal that a public relations team managing social media for a financial services firm is consistently publishing promotional content without a formal review process by the compliance department, relying instead on the social media manager's judgment regarding regulatory adherence. Which of the following approaches represents the most effective process optimization for ensuring compliance and mitigating risk? Option A. Implement a mandatory multi-stage review process where all social media content related to financial promotions is first reviewed by compliance officers for regulatory adherence, and then by a designated PR or marketing lead for strategic alignment and brand voice before publication. Option B. Establish a review process that focuses solely on grammatical accuracy and brand consistency, assuming that the social media manager possesses sufficient knowledge of financial regulations. Option C. Empower the social media manager to self-certify all content for regulatory compliance, with the understanding that any errors will be corrected promptly after posting. Option D. Authorize immediate publication of all drafted social media content, with a plan to issue a retraction or correction if any regulatory issues are identified post-publication. Correct answer is A. Implement a mandatory multi-stage review process where all social media content related to financial promotions is first reviewed by compliance officers for regulatory adherence, and then by a designated PR or marketing lead for strategic alignment and brand voice before publication. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR professional to navigate the rapid dissemination of information on social media while adhering to strict regulatory requirements for financial promotions. The speed of social media can lead to accidental noncompliance if not managed with robust processes. The need to balance timely communication with regulatory accuracy and ethical disclosure is paramount, especially in a regulated industry. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves establishing a multi-stage review process for all social media content related to financial promotions. This process should include a review by compliance officers to ensure adherence to all relevant regulations, such as those from the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA in the UK, and a final sign-off by a designated PR or marketing lead. This layered approach ensures that content is not only accurate and engaging, but also legally compliant and ethically sound before it is published. This aligns with the FCA's principles for business, particularly Principle 7, Communications with Clients, which requires firms to pay due regard to the information needs of their clients and to communicate information to them in a way that is clear, fair, and not misleading. The CISI Code of Conduct also emphasizes integrity and due skill, care, and diligence, which are upheld by such a rigorous review process. Incorrect approaches analysis. Relying solely on the social media manager to self-certify content for regulatory compliance is an incorrect approach. This places an undue burden on an individual who may not have the specialized knowledge of financial regulations required by the FCA. It bypasses essential compliance checks, increasing the risk of misleading statements or omissions, which is a direct violation of regulatory principles and the CISI Code of Conduct. Publishing content immediately after it is drafted, with the intention of correcting any errors post-publication, is also an incorrect and highly risky approach. Social media's immediate reach means that misleading information can spread rapidly, causing significant reputational damage and regulatory breaches before any correction can be made. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the principle of clear, fair, and not misleading communication. Implementing a review process that only checks for grammatical errors and brand consistency, without involving compliance, is insufficient. While these aspects are important for professional presentation, they do not address the critical regulatory requirements for financial promotions. This approach fails to safeguard against non-compliance with financial regulations, leaving the organization exposed to significant penalties and reputational harm. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to social media content creation and dissemination, particularly when dealing with regulated financial information. This involves 1. Understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization and its communications, e.g., FCA rules in the UK. 2. Developing clear internal policies and procedures for social media use, including content approval workflows. 3. Ensuring that all personnel involved in creating or approving social media content are adequately trained on relevant regulations and ethical standards. 4. Implementing a multi-stage review process that includes subject matter experts, compliance officers, and senior PR/marketing personnel before publication. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating these processes to reflect changes in regulations and social media platforms. 6. Prioritizing accuracy, fairness, and transparency in all communications, especially those that could influence financial decisions. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that a public relations firm is tasked with conducting a comprehensive social media audit and competitive analysis for a new client in the highly regulated financial services sector. The firm has access to the client's internal social media performance dashboards, which contain detailed engagement metrics, audience demographics, and campaign spending data. The firm also has a general understanding of the competitive landscape from previous work with other clients in the same sector, but no specific, non-public information about direct competitors. The practitioner is considering how to best leverage this information for the audit and analysis. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory requirements and ethical best practices for conducting this social media audit and competitive analysis? Option A. Utilize all available data from the client's internal social media performance dashboards, including detailed campaign spending and audience demographic breakdowns, to inform the audit and analysis, while also cross-referencing general industry trends observed from publicly available competitor social media activity. Option B. Integrate insights from past projects with other financial services clients, including any non-public strategic approaches or campaign structures observed, to provide a more nuanced competitive analysis for the current client. Option C. Conduct the audit and analysis by directly accessing publicly available competitor social media profiles and inferring their marketing strategies and budget allocations based on the volume and type of content posted. Option D. Focus the audit and analysis solely on publicly observable competitor social media content and engagement metrics, and use the client's internal dashboards only to identify broad areas of success or underperformance without delving into specific campaign details or spending. The correct answer is A. Utilize all available data from the client's internal social media performance dashboards, including detailed campaign spending and audience demographic breakdowns, to inform the audit and analysis, while also cross-referencing general industry trends observed from publicly available competitor social media activity. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a public relations practitioner to balance the imperative of conducting a thorough social media audit and competitive analysis with the ethical obligation to protect confidential client information. The practitioner must navigate the potential for inadvertently disclosing sensitive data during the analysis process, which could have significant legal and reputational consequences for the client. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the audit and analysis are comprehensive without compromising client trust or violating any regulatory frameworks. The correct approach involves conducting the social media audit and competitive analysis using publicly available information and data that has been explicitly authorized for use by the client. This means focusing on observable metrics, publicly shared content, and general industry trends. The ethical justification for this approach lies in upholding client confidentiality and data privacy. Public relations professionals are bound by ethical codes that emphasize discretion and the protection of proprietary information. Regulatory frameworks, such as those governing data protection and fair competition, also implicitly support this approach by penalizing the misuse or unauthorized disclosure of sensitive business information. An incorrect approach would be to access or utilize any internal client data, such as unpublished campaign strategies, unreleased product information, or private customer lists, without explicit written consent. This constitutes a breach of confidentiality and potentially violates data privacy regulations. Another incorrect approach would be to infer or speculate about competitor strategies based on non-public information obtained through unauthorized means, which could lead to misrepresentation and damage to both the client's and the competitor's reputation, and potentially violate antitrust or unfair competition laws. A third incorrect approach would be to share findings from the audit that reveal specific, non-public weaknesses or vulnerabilities of the client or competitors with unauthorized third parties, which is a direct violation of professional ethics and could have legal ramifications. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and regulatory compliance. This involves clearly defining the scope of the audit and analysis, identifying all data sources, and obtaining explicit authorization for any data that is not publicly available. When in doubt about the permissibility of using certain information, professionals should err on the side of caution and seek clarification or legal counsel. Regular review of ethical guidelines and relevant regulations is crucial to ensure ongoing compliance. Question 8. The monitoring system demonstrates that posts featuring user-generated content and interactive polls are receiving significantly higher engagement rates on Instagram compared to standard promotional posts. A junior PR team member suggests prioritizing the creation of more such content, even if it means slightly deviating from the core messaging to align with trending poll topics, to maximize reach and visibility. The senior PR manager is concerned that this approach might dilute the brand's established narrative and potentially mislead the audience about the brand's primary focus. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for the public relations team to adopt in this situation, considering the goal of effective social media communication and maintaining brand integrity? Option A. Develop a strategy that creatively integrates core brand messaging into user-generated content prompts and poll questions, ensuring that the engagement tactics serve to reinforce, rather than detract from, the brand's narrative, while also exploring opportunities for organic reach through authentic content. Option B. Focus exclusively on creating highly engaging poll topics and user-generated content prompts that are popular on the platform, even if they are only tangentially related to the brand's core messaging, to capitalize on the algorithm's preference for high engagement. Option C. Reduce the creation of standard promotional posts and instead focus solely on user-generated content and polls, accepting that the brand's core messaging will be less prominent in favor of maximizing algorithmic visibility. Option D. Increase the frequency of paid promotional posts that mimic the style of high engagement, user-generated content and polls, without explicitly disclosing their sponsored nature, to artificially boost visibility and engagement metrics. The correct answer is A. Develop a strategy that creatively integrates core brand messaging into user-generated content prompts and poll questions, ensuring that the engagement tactics serve to reinforce, rather than detract from, the brand's narrative, while also exploring opportunities for organic reach through authentic content. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it forces a public relations practitioner to balance the desire for increased content visibility, driven by the Instagram algorithm, with ethical obligations to provide accurate and non-misleading information to the public. The algorithm's preference for engagement can incentivize tactics that might not align with transparency or genuine communication. Careful judgment is required to ensure that strategies aimed at algorithmic optimization do not compromise the integrity of the public relations message or violate any relevant regulations. The correct approach involves prioritizing authentic engagement and value-driven content that naturally resonates with the target audience, rather than manipulating engagement metrics. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and accuracy in public relations, ensuring that the content presented is a genuine reflection of the organization's message and not artificially inflated. From a regulatory perspective, this approach avoids any potential misrepresentation or deceptive practices that could be construed as violating guidelines related to truthful communication, even if not explicitly codified for social media algorithms. The focus remains on building genuine relationships and trust, which is a cornerstone of effective and ethical public relations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on boosting engagement through superficial means, such as incentivizing likes or comments without providing substantive value, fails to uphold the ethical duty of honesty. This can lead to a misrepresentation of audience interest and engagement, potentially misleading stakeholders about the true impact or reception of the content. Furthermore, such tactics could be seen as circumventing the spirit of fair communication, even if not directly prohibited by specific social media platform rules. Another incorrect approach that involves using misleading hashtags or trending topics solely to gain visibility, without any genuine connection to the content, is ethically problematic. This practice can deceive users into clicking on content that is irrelevant to their interests, eroding trust and damaging the organization's reputation. It also undermines the purpose of hashtags as discoverability tools, creating a cluttered and less effective environment for genuine content. From a regulatory standpoint, while not a direct violation of specific laws in this context, it borders on deceptive practices by creating a false impression of relevance. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes paid promotion over organic reach, without transparency about the sponsored nature of the content, if it leads to a misperception of organic popularity or endorsement, is also ethically unsound. While paid promotion is a legitimate tool, its use must not be designed to deceive the audience about the content's origin or perceived authenticity. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the potential impact of any algorithmic strategy on the organization's reputation and ethical standing. Practitioners should ask, does this strategy enhance genuine communication and audience understanding? Does it uphold the principles of honesty and transparency? Are we providing real value to our audience? If the answer to these questions is not a clear yes, then the strategy should be reevaluated or discarded in favor of approaches that prioritize ethical communication and authentic engagement. Question 9. The performance metrics show that posts utilizing interactive polls and user-generated content campaigns are driving significantly higher engagement rates than static image posts. However, a recent internal review highlighted that some user-generated content campaigns have not clearly disclosed their promotional nature, and the polls are sometimes framed in a way that subtly steers respondents towards a preferred outcome. Considering best practices for social media and public relations, which approach best balances engagement maximization with ethical and regulatory compliance. Option A. Continue to leverage interactive polls and user-generated content campaigns, ensuring all sponsored content is clearly disclosed with appropriate hashtags and that poll questions are neutral and fact-based, while also reviewing platform terms of service for any additional engagement guidelines. Option B, increase the frequency of user-generated content campaigns and interactive polls, focusing solely on maximizing engagement metrics, as the higher interaction rates are the primary indicator of success. Option C, focus exclusively on user-generated content campaigns, encouraging participants to share their experiences without any specific disclosure requirements, as organic sharing is perceived as more authentic and less regulated. Option D, implement more sophisticated algorithms to personalize poll questions and content suggestions based on user data, aiming to increase relevance and thus engagement, without explicit disclosure of data usage for this purpose. Correct answer is A. Continue to leverage interactive polls and user-generated content campaigns, ensuring all sponsored content is clearly disclosed with appropriate hashtags and that poll questions are neutral and fact-based, while also reviewing platform terms of service for any additional engagement guidelines. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, leveraging platform features effectively while adhering to ethical and regulatory standards. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire to maximize engagement and reach with the obligation to provide accurate, non-misleading information and to respect user privacy. Public relations professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure their use of platform functionalities aligns with the organization's reputation and legal obligations. The correct approach involves a strategic and compliant use of platform features. This means understanding how each feature can be used to enhance communication and engagement without crossing ethical or regulatory lines. For instance, utilizing features like targeted advertising for relevant audiences, live queue, and accessions for transparency, and interactive polls for feedback are all legitimate uses. Crucially, this approach prioritizes transparency in sponsored content, ensures data privacy is respected when using analytics, and avoids manipulative tactics. Regulatory justification stems from principles of truthfulness, fairness, and transparency, often codified in advertising standards and data protection laws. For example, in the U.S., the Federal Trade Commission (FTC) guidelines require clear disclosure of material connections in endorsements and advertising, which extends to social media. Similarly, the California Consumer Privacy Act (CCPA) mandates specific practices regarding the collection and use of personal data. Ethical justification is rooted in building trust with the audience and maintaining the integrity of public discourse. An incorrect approach that relies on undisclosed paid partnerships fails to meet regulatory requirements for transparency. In the U.S., the FTC mandates clear and conspicuous disclosure of any material connection between an endorser and the advertiser. Failing to do so misleads consumers about the nature of the content, potentially violating advertising laws and eroding public trust. Another incorrect approach that uses engagement bait tactics, such as asking users to tag friends or share for a chance to win, without a genuine offer or clear terms and conditions, can be seen as manipulative and may violate platform terms of service or consumer protection laws related to deceptive practices. Furthermore, misrepresenting the capabilities of a product or service through exaggerated claims, even if facilitated by a platform's visual features, constitutes false advertising, which is prohibited by regulations like the FTC Act. Professional decision-making in such situations requires a thorough understanding of the specific platform's features, the organization's communication goals, and the applicable regulatory landscape. A public relations professional should always ask, is this use of the platform feature transparent, truthful, and respectful of the audience's rights and expectations? They should consult internal legal counsel or compliance officers when in doubt and stay updated on evolving platform policies and regulatory guidance. Prioritizing ethical conduct and regulatory compliance over short-term engagement gains is paramount for long-term credibility and organizational success. Question 10. Benchmark analysis indicates that many organizations are struggling to effectively integrate their social media communication strategies with their regulatory disclosure obligations, particularly when announcing significant corporate developments. A public relations manager is tasked with developing a social media plan for an upcoming product launch that is expected to have a substantial impact on the company's market share and financial performance. The manager is considering several approaches to ensure compliance while maximizing engagement, Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory frameworks and ethical best practices for social media communication in this context? Option A. Ensure that all material financial projections and market impact assessments related to the product launch are filed with the relevant regulatory body and publicly disseminated through official channels before any social media posts about the launch are made. Option B. Prioritize immediate social media announcements of key product features and anticipated market impact, followed by a general disclaimer about the information not constituting investment advice. Option C. Post preliminary information about the product launch on social media to gauge public reaction, and then decide whether to pursue formal regulatory disclosures based on the engagement levels. Option D. Rely on the company's existing website disclaimer to cover any potential disclosure issues, and focus social media efforts on generating buzz and excitement around the product. The correct answer is B. Prioritize immediate social media announcements of key product features and anticipated market impact, followed by a general disclaimer about the information not constituting investment advice. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, balancing the need for timely and engaging social media content with the imperative to adhere to regulatory disclosure requirements. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the specific disclosure obligations relevant to the organization's industry and the nature of the information being shared. Failure to comply can lead to significant reputational damage, regulatory penalties, and loss of public trust. The pressure to maintain a competitive edge on social media can tempt practitioners to overlook or downplay these critical compliance aspects, making careful judgment and a robust understanding of the regulatory framework paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactively identifying all material non-public information that could be shared on social media and ensuring that appropriate disclosures are made before or concurrently with the social media post. This means understanding the specific disclosure requirements of the relevant regulatory body, e.g., SEC in the U.S. for publicly traded companies, and implementing internal processes to verify that all necessary information is disseminated through official channels. For instance, if a company is announcing a significant new product, any associated financial projections or market impact data must be disclosed in a Form 8-K filing with the SEC before or at the same time as the announcement on social media. This approach prioritizes transparency and compliance, mitigating the risk of insider trading allegations or misleading the public. It aligns with the ethical duty of PR professionals to ensure accuracy and truthfulness in all communications. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that social media posts are exempt from disclosure rules because they are informal or widely disseminated. This ignores the reality that social media platforms are increasingly recognized as official channels for corporate communications, and information shared there can be considered material. This approach risks violating regulations that require timely disclosure of material information, potentially leading to accusations of selective disclosure or market manipulation. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on a general disclaimer at the end of a social media profile or website that states, "This is not investment advice." While disclaimers can be part of a compliance strategy, they are insufficient on their own if specific material information is being shared without proper disclosure. This approach fails to address the core requirement of disclosing material non-public information itself, instead attempting to mitigate liability after the fact. It is ethically problematic as it can be seen as an attempt to circumvent disclosure obligations. A third incorrect approach is to only disclose information on social media that has already been widely reported by traditional media outlets. While this might seem like a way to ensure broad dissemination, it does not absolve the organization of its primary disclosure responsibilities. If the information is material and non-public, it must be disclosed through the prescribed regulatory channels first, regardless of whether other media outlets eventually pick it up. This approach can still lead to accusations of selective disclosure if the social media announcement precedes the official regulatory filing. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a disclosure-first mindset when planning social media content that involves potentially material information. This involves establishing clear internal protocols for reviewing social media content against regulatory disclosure requirements. A robust process would include a pre-approval step involving legal and compliance departments for any social media posts that could be construed as containing material non-public information. Professionals should continuously educate themselves on the evolving regulatory landscape for social media communications within their specific jurisdiction and industry. When in doubt, err on the side of caution and ensure full compliance with official disclosure requirements before posting on social media. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a public relations firm is tasked with launching a new corporate social responsibility initiative aimed at educating small business owners about sustainable practices. The firm has a limited budget and needs to maximize its impact. Which of the following platform selection strategies would best align with these objectives and regulatory considerations? Option A. Selecting platforms with established professional networks, robust targeting capabilities for business-related interests, and content formats suitable for informative articles and case studies. Option B. Focusing on platforms known for their visual content and short-form video, regardless of whether small business owners are the primary users. Option C. Prioritizing platforms with a broad, general audience and high overall engagement rates, assuming this will naturally capture the target demographic. Option D. Opting for the newest, trending platforms to generate buzz, even if their user base and long-term viability are uncertain. The correct answer is C. Prioritizing platforms with a broad, general audience and high overall engagement rates, assuming this will naturally capture the target demographic. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, selecting the most effective social media platforms to achieve specific communication objectives while adhering to regulatory guidelines. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for broad reach and engagement with the need for targeted messaging and compliance. Misjudging platform suitability can lead to wasted resources, ineffective campaigns, and potential regulatory breaches. Careful judgment is required to align platform characteristics with campaign goals and audience demographics, always within the bounds of applicable regulations. The correct approach involves a strategic evaluation of each platform's user base, content formats, engagement metrics, and advertising capabilities against the defined PR objectives. For instance, if the objective is to reach a younger demographic with visual content, platforms like TikTok or Instagram would be prioritized. If the goal is to disseminate detailed policy information to industry professionals, LinkedIn or a dedicated corporate blog might be more appropriate. This approach is correct because it is data-driven, objective-oriented, and inherently compliant by considering the platform's inherent characteristics and how they align with the intended message and audience, thereby minimizing the risk of miscommunication or regulatory violations. The specific regulatory framework for this exam, which focuses on U.S. regulations, mandates that all public communications be accurate, not misleading, and adhere to platform-specific terms of service and advertising guidelines. This strategic selection process ensures that the chosen platforms are conducive to achieving the PR objectives without inadvertently violating these principles. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize platforms based solely on popularity or perceived reach, without considering the alignment with specific PR objectives. For example, choosing a platform with a massive user base but a demographic or content style that is antithetical to the campaign's message would be a failure. This is a regulatory and ethical failure because it leads to inefficient resource allocation and a high probability of the message not resonating with the target audience, thus failing to achieve the PR objective. Furthermore, if the chosen platform's content format or user engagement style is not conducive to conveying the intended message accurately, it could lead to misinterpretation, which is a violation of the principle of clear and truthful communication mandated by U.S. regulations. Another incorrect approach is to select platforms based on personal preference or familiarity without conducting due diligence on their suitability for the specific PR campaign. This can result in using platforms that are not designed for the type of content being produced or that do not reach the intended audience effectively. This is a professional failure as it demonstrates a lack of strategic thinking and a disregard for the principles of effective communication. Ethically, it can lead to wasted organizational resources and a failure to meet communication obligations. A third incorrect approach is to overlook the advertising and targeting capabilities of platforms, focusing only on organic reach. If the PR objective requires precise audience segmentation or a specific message delivery, platforms with limited targeting options would be unsuitable. This is a failure because it hinders the ability to effectively reach the desired stakeholders and could lead to broader, less impactful communication, potentially failing to meet regulatory requirements for targeted disclosures or specific stakeholder engagement. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic evaluation framework. This framework begins with clearly defining the PR objectives and target audience. Next, research and analyze the characteristics of various social media platforms, including their demographics, content formats, engagement patterns, and advertising functionalities. Then, map these platform characteristics against the defined objectives and audience. Finally, select the platforms that offer the best alignment, ensuring that the chosen platforms facilitate accurate, compliant, and effective communication within the relevant regulatory framework. Question 12. The assessment process reveals that a public relations team is considering expanding its social media presence to include emerging platforms. Which of the following approaches best demonstrates a strategic and compliant method for evaluating and integrating these new platforms into their public relations strategy? Option A. Prioritizing platforms based on their current user growth rate and viral content potential, then developing generic content to test engagement. Option B. Relying on past successful strategies from established social media platforms and adapting them without investigating the unique features or user behavior of the new platform. Option C. Adopting a new platform immediately if it is trending among a younger demographic, assuming it will naturally align with the organization's brand messaging. Option D. Conducting thorough research into a platform's user demographics, content moderation policies, and alignment with organizational communication objectives and regulatory guidelines before committing resources. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing platforms based on their current user growth rate and viral content potential, then developing generic content to test engagement. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge for public relations professionals, staying abreast of the rapidly evolving social media landscape and strategically integrating new platforms into communication efforts. This scenario is professionally challenging because the effectiveness and regulatory compliance of social media strategies are directly tied to an understanding of emerging platforms' functionalities, user demographics, and content moderation policies. A failure to adapt can lead to missed opportunities, inefficient resource allocation, or even regulatory breaches. Careful judgment is required to discern which new platforms offer genuine strategic value versus those that are fleeting trends. The correct approach involves a proactive and analytical evaluation of new and growing social media platforms. This entails researching the platform's core features, target audience alignment with organizational goals, potential for engagement, and importantly, its terms of service and any relevant regulatory considerations, such as data privacy or advertising standards, within the specified jurisdiction. This approach is best professional practice because it ensures that any adoption of a new platform is data-driven, strategically aligned, and compliant, thereby maximizing potential return on investment and minimizing risk. It reflects a commitment to informed decision-making and responsible communication, adhering to the principles of professional PR practice and relevant guidelines. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the perceived popularity or buzz of a new platform without due diligence is professionally unacceptable. This overlooks the critical need for strategic alignment and can lead to wasted resources on platforms that do not reach the target audience or support communication objectives. Furthermore, it risks non-compliance if the platform's terms of service or content policies conflict with organizational standards or regulatory requirements. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes rapid adoption for the sake of appearing innovative, without understanding the platform's user base or content limitations, is also flawed. This can result in misdirected efforts, ineffective messaging, and potential reputational damage if the platform is unsuitable for the organization's brand or message. It fails to consider the practical implications of platform integration and the potential for unintended consequences. A third incorrect approach that relies on outdated knowledge of social media trends and fails to investigate the unique characteristics of emerging platforms is equally problematic. This leads to a reactive rather than proactive strategy, potentially missing valuable opportunities or misapplying strategies from established platforms to new ones, thereby diminishing effectiveness and failing to leverage the unique strengths of emerging channels. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous learning cycle. This includes dedicating time for research into new platforms, assessing their potential fit with organizational objectives and audience, understanding their operational and ethical frameworks, and conducting pilot programs or small-scale tests before full-scale implementation. It requires a critical mindset that questions assumptions and prioritizes strategic value and compliance over mere novelty. Question 13. The audit findings indicate that the recent TikTok campaign for a new sustainable fashion brand achieved only moderate reach, despite significant investment. The PR team is under pressure to significantly increase content virality for the next campaign. Considering the principles of ethical public relations and the dynamics of the TikTok algorithm, which of the following strategies would be most effective and professionally responsible for enhancing content virality? Option A. Create highly provocative and emotionally charged content designed to generate strong reactions and debate, even if it means slightly exaggerating product benefits or making unsubstantiated claims. Option B. Develop a content strategy that prioritizes authentic storytelling, user-generated content integration, and participation in relevant trending challenges and sounds, while closely monitoring audience engagement metrics to refine content themes and formats. Option C. Implement a strategy heavily focused on using a broad range of trending hashtags and keywords in every post, regardless of direct relevance to the content, to maximize discoverability. Option D. Explore partnerships with micro-influencers who can guarantee a specific number of views and shares, even if their audience alignment with the brand is not perfectly matched. The correct answer is B. Develop a content strategy that prioritizes authentic storytelling, user-generated content integration, and participation in relevant trending challenges and sounds, while closely monitoring audience engagement metrics to refine content themes and formats. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR professional to navigate the complex and often opaque TikTok algorithm to achieve campaign objectives while adhering to ethical communication standards and potentially industry-specific guidelines for social media use. The pressure to achieve virality can tempt shortcuts that might compromise authenticity or transparency. Careful judgment is required to balance performance metrics with responsible content creation and distribution. The correct approach involves a deep understanding of TikTok's content virality drivers, focusing on creating authentic, engaging, and value-driven content that resonates with specific audience segments. This includes leveraging trending formats, sounds, and challenges in a way that feels organic to the brand's voice and message. It also necessitates continuous monitoring of performance analytics to understand what content is performing well and why, allowing for iterative refinement of the strategy. This approach aligns with ethical PR principles of honesty and transparency, as it prioritizes genuine audience connection over manipulative tactics. While specific regulations for TikTok's algorithm are not typically codified in law, industry best practices and ethical codes for PR professionals emphasize authenticity and avoiding deceptive practices, which this approach upholds. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on keyword stuffing and hashtag manipulation fails to recognize that the TikTok algorithm prioritizes user engagement and content quality over simple keyword density. This can lead to content that is technically optimized but lacks genuine appeal, ultimately hindering virality and potentially alienating the audience. It also risks creating content that feels inauthentic or spammy, which is ethically questionable. Another incorrect approach that relies heavily on purchasing engagement metrics or using bot farms is a direct violation of TikTok's terms of service and constitutes deceptive practice. This is not only unethical but can lead to severe penalties, including account suspension and reputational damage. It undermines the integrity of PR efforts by creating a false impression of popularity and engagement. A further incorrect approach that involves creating sensationalized or misleading content solely to provoke a reaction, even if it achieves short-term virality, is ethically unsound. While controversy can sometimes drive engagement, It can also damage brand reputation and erode trust. PR professionals have a responsibility to communicate truthfully and responsibly, and this approach prioritizes fleeting attention over long-term credibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the platform's mechanics, a commitment to ethical communication, and a data-driven approach to content strategy. Professionals should prioritize building genuine connections with their target audience through authentic and valuable content, rather than seeking to game the system. Continuous learning about platform updates and algorithm changes, coupled with a strong ethical compass, is crucial for effective and responsible social media PR. Question 14. The control framework reveals that a public relations team is tasked with promoting a new financial product across multiple social media platforms. To maximize reach and engagement, they are considering various content optimization strategies. Which of the following approaches best balances platform-specific optimization with regulatory compliance for financial communications in the United States? Option A. Developing visually appealing infographics and short, attention-grabbing videos for all platforms, with a single, generic disclaimer linked in the bio. Option B. Using a standardized, text-heavy message across all platforms to ensure all information is conveyed, regardless of platform-specific engagement norms. Option C. Focusing solely on trending topics and viral content formats to drive maximum engagement, assuming that the inherent popularity of the content will mitigate any potential disclosure issues. Option D. Creating platform-specific content that leverages each channel's strengths, e.g., concise text for Twitter, longer posts for LinkedIn, while ensuring all necessary disclosures and disclaimers are clearly and conspicuously integrated within the content or directly accessible from it. The correct answer is A. Developing visually appealing infographics and short, attention-grabbing videos for all platforms, with a single, generic disclaimer linked in the bio. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations practitioner to balance the need for engaging content with strict adherence to regulatory guidelines for social media communication. The core challenge lies in understanding and applying platform-specific optimization techniques without inadvertently violating disclosure requirements or misrepresenting information, which could lead to regulatory penalties and reputational damage. Careful judgment is required to ensure that content is both effective and compliant. The correct approach involves tailoring content for each platform's unique characteristics and audience expectations, while ensuring all necessary disclosures are integrated seamlessly and transparently. This aligns with regulatory frameworks that emphasize clarity, accuracy, and the prevention of misleading communications. For instance, in the U.S., the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) and the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority (FINRA) have guidelines regarding social media communications by financial firms, emphasizing that all material information must be disclosed. Optimizing content for a platform like Twitter, which has character limits, requires concise messaging that still includes essential disclaimers, perhaps through a link to a more detailed disclosure. Similarly, on LinkedIn, a more professional platform, longer-form content can be used, but the same disclosure principles apply. Ethical considerations also demand that the public is not misled by overly simplified or visually appealing content that omits crucial details. An incorrect approach that prioritizes engagement metrics above all else, such as using trending hashtags or visually striking imagery without considering the accompanying text compliance, fails to meet regulatory standards. This could lead to accusations of misleading advertising or failure to disclose material information, resulting in fines and sanctions. Another incorrect approach might involve using generic, one-size-fits-all content across all platforms, ignoring platform-specific optimization. This not only reduces engagement, but also increases the risk of content being misinterpreted or failing to convey necessary disclosures effectively on platforms where brevity or visual emphasis is paramount. For example, a lengthy disclaimer that is crucial for compliance might be entirely missed or truncated on a platform like Instagram Stories if not properly integrated. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the regulatory landscape relevant to their industry and jurisdiction. Before creating any content, They must identify all disclosure requirements and compliance obligations. Then, they should analyze the specific characteristics of each social media platform they intend to use, considering audience demographics, content formats, and engagement patterns. The next step is to brainstorm content ideas that are both engaging and compliant, focusing on how to integrate disclosures naturally and effectively within each platform's constraints. Finally, a robust review process involving legal or compliance teams should be implemented to vet all social media content before publication, ensuring it meets both strategic and regulatory objectives. Question 15. Cost-benefit analysis shows that a public relations campaign on social media needs to be highly targeted to maximize impact and minimize wasted expenditure. Which approach to identifying target audiences and developing communication strategies is most likely to achieve these objectives while adhering to ethical communication principles? Option A. Developing detailed audience personas based on qualitative and quantitative research, including motivations, behaviors, and platform preferences, and tailoring content and platform selection accordingly. Option B. Creating a single generic content strategy to be deployed uniformly across all social media channels to ensure consistency. Option C. Focusing on broad demographic categories like age and location to ensure a wide net is cast for potential engagement. Option D. Prioritizing the sheer volume of impressions across all available social media platforms, regardless of audience relevance. The correct answer is A. Developing detailed audience personas based on qualitative and quantitative research, including motivations, behaviors, and platform preferences, and tailoring content and platform selection accordingly. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, effectively allocating limited resources to reach the most impactful audience segments on social media. A professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for broad reach with the necessity of targeted engagement, ensuring that communication efforts resonate with specific groups who are most likely to be influenced or to act upon the information. Misjudging the target audience can lead to wasted resources, ineffective campaigns, and a failure to achieve PR objectives, potentially damaging the organization's reputation and credibility. Careful judgment is required to move beyond superficial demographics and understand the nuanced behaviors, motivations, and platform preferences of potential audiences. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves developing detailed personas based on comprehensive market research and audience segmentation. This method is right because it moves beyond broad demographic categories to create rich, qualitative profiles of ideal audience members. These personas represent fictional yet realistic individuals who embody the characteristics of key target segments. They include information on their motivations, pain points, online behaviors, preferred social media platforms, content consumption habits, and communication styles. This deep understanding allows PR professionals to tailor messaging, content formats, and platform strategies with precision, maximizing relevance and engagement. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this approach aligns with principles of responsible communication by ensuring that messages are delivered to those most likely to be interested, and by avoiding the dissemination of irrelevant or potentially misleading information to unintended audiences. It also supports compliance with data privacy regulations by focusing on aggregated, anonymized insights rather than intrusive personal data collection for targeting. Incorrect approach is analysis. Focusing solely on broad demographic categories, such as age and location, is an incorrect approach because it lacks the depth needed for effective social media engagement. While demographics provide a basic understanding, they fail to capture the behavioral nuances, interests, and motivations that drive audience interaction. This superficial targeting can lead to messages that are ignored or misinterpreted, resulting in wasted campaign expenditure and a failure to achieve desired PR outcomes. Ethically, it can also lead to the broad dissemination of information that may not be relevant or beneficial to all individuals within those broad categories. Prioritizing reach over engagement is another incorrect approach. While a large number of impressions might seem desirable, it does not guarantee that the message is being received by the right people or that it is having any impact. This strategy can lead to significant expenditure on platforms or content that does not resonate with the intended audience, thus failing to achieve the strategic goals of the PR campaign. It represents a failure in professional judgment by prioritizing quantity over quality of interaction, which is a core tenet of effective PR. Ignoring platform-specific audience behaviors and focusing on a one-size-fits-all content strategy is also an incorrect approach. Different social media platforms track distinct user bases with varying expectations and engagement patterns. A failure to acknowledge and adapt to these differences means that content may be poorly received or entirely missed by the intended audience on a particular platform. This leads to inefficient resource allocation and a diminished impact of the PR campaign, failing to leverage the unique strengths of each social media channel. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a data-driven and audience-centric approach. This begins with thorough research to identify potential audience segments. The next critical step is to move beyond basic demographics to develop detailed personas that capture the psychographics, behaviors, and platform preferences of these segments. This allows for the creation of highly targeted and relevant communication strategies. Professionals must continuously monitor campaign performance, analyze engagement metrics, and be prepared to refine their audience understanding and strategies based on real-time data and feedback. This iterative process ensures that PR efforts remain effective, efficient, and ethically sound, aligning with the organization's objectives and respecting the audience. Question 16. Upon reviewing LinkedIn analytics for a recent public relations campaign, a PR professional needs to report on the campaign's success to senior management. Which approach to interpreting and presenting these analytics best aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks and ethical guidelines for public relations? Option A. Focus on aggregated data showing overall engagement trends, reach, and the sentiment of comments, contextualizing these metrics against campaign objectives and industry benchmarks, while ensuring no proprietary or personally identifiable information is disclosed. Option B. Share detailed demographic data of individuals who interacted with the campaign content, including their job titles and company affiliations, to demonstrate the campaign's targeted reach. Option C. Highlight the number of new connections made by the PR team, emphasizing the growth in individual professional networks as a direct measure of campaign influence. Option D. Extrapolate significant shifts in market perception based on a small sample of positive comments, assuming these represent a widespread change in public opinion. The correct answer is A. Focus on aggregated data showing overall engagement trends, reach, and the sentiment of comments, contextualizing these metrics against campaign objectives and industry benchmarks, while ensuring no proprietary or personally identifiable information is disclosed. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations professional to interpret LinkedIn analytics in a way that is both strategically sound for the organization and compliant with relevant regulations and ethical guidelines. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to demonstrate the effectiveness of social media campaigns with the need to avoid misrepresentation or the disclosure of sensitive information, all while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing public relations in the United States. Careful judgment is required to ensure that insights derived from analytics are presented accurately and responsibly. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of LinkedIn's analytics features and their limitations, coupled with a commitment to transparency and accuracy when reporting findings. This approach prioritizes the ethical obligation to present data truthfully and avoid misleading stakeholders. Specifically, it means focusing on aggregated, anonymized data that reflects general trends in campaign performance without revealing proprietary information or making unsubstantiated claims about individual engagement or impact. This aligns with the ethical principles of the Public Relations Society of America, PRSA Code of Ethics, which emphasizes accuracy, truthfulness, and avoiding deceptive practices. Furthermore, it respects the terms of service of platforms like LinkedIn, which govern data usage and reporting. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on vanity metrics without contextualizing them or considering their true impact on organizational goals is professionally unacceptable. This fails to demonstrate genuine strategic value and can lead to misinformed decision-making. Another incorrect approach that involves extrapolating broad conclusions from limited or potentially biased data is also problematic, as it risks misrepresenting campaign effectiveness and eroding trust. A third incorrect approach that might involve sharing raw, unanalyzed data or personally identifiable information from LinkedIn analytics would be a significant ethical and potentially legal violation, breaching privacy and confidentiality. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly defining the objectives of the social media campaign and the specific insights needed. They should then identify the relevant LinkedIn analytics that can address these objectives, critically evaluating the data for accuracy and potential biases. The reporting of these insights must be framed within the context of organizational goals, using clear, honest language, and avoiding hyperbole or unsubstantiated claims. This process ensures that analytics are used as a tool for strategic improvement and transparent communication, rather than for superficial self-promotion or misleading reporting, all while remaining within the bounds of U.S. regulatory and ethical standards. Question 17. The evaluation methodology shows that a public relations practitioner is seeking to maximize the reach and engagement of their LinkedIn content. Considering the platform's algorithm and ethical communication standards, which of the following strategies would be most effective and professionally sound for achieving this goal? Option A. Focusing exclusively on paid promotion to boost post visibility, with minimal effort invested in organic content creation. Option B. Prioritizing the creation of high-quality, relevant content tailored to the target audience's interests and encouraging genuine discussion and interaction. Option C. Aggressively using a wide array of trending and unrelated hashtags on every post to increase discoverability. Option D. Publishing content at the maximum frequency allowed by the platform, regardless of its intrinsic value or audience relevance. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the creation of high-quality, relevant content tailored to the target audience's interests and encouraging genuine discussion and interaction. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations practitioner to navigate the opaque nature of the LinkedIn algorithm while adhering to ethical communication standards and potentially industry-specific guidelines. The practitioner must balance the desire for content visibility with the responsibility to provide genuine value and avoid manipulative tactics that could mislead the audience or violate platform terms of service. The challenge lies in understanding how algorithmic preferences intersect with professional ethics and the need for transparent, authentic engagement. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a strategic focus on creating high-quality, relevant content that genuinely resonates with the target audience. This includes understanding audience interests, industry trends, and the types of posts that foster meaningful engagement, comments, shares, thoughtful reactions. By prioritizing authentic value and encouraging genuine interaction, the practitioner aligns with ethical PR principles of honesty and transparency. Furthermore, this approach indirectly influences the algorithm positively, as platforms like LinkedIn are designed to reward content that keeps users engaged and fosters community. This method respects the platform's intent and avoids practices that could be construed as artificial inflation of engagement, which could lead to penalties or reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves solely focusing on gaming the algorithm through excessive use of trending hashtags, generic engagement prompts, or repetitive posting schedules without regard for content quality or audience relevance. This fails ethically by prioritizing artificial visibility over genuine communication and could be seen as misleading the audience about the value of the content. It also risks violating LinkedIn's terms of service regarding artificial engagement. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize quantity over quality, publishing a high volume of low-value content simply to maintain a constant presence. This dilutes the brand's message, annoys the audience, and ultimately fails to build meaningful connections. Ethically, it represents a lack of respect for the audience's time and attention. A third incorrect approach is to solely rely on paid promotion without a strong organic content strategy. While paid promotion can boost reach, an over-reliance on it without a foundation of valuable organic content can lead to superficial engagement and a perception of inauthenticity. Ethically, it can be seen as buying influence rather than earning it through merit. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach social media strategy by first understanding their audience and communication objectives. They should then research best practices for content creation and engagement on the specific platform, always prioritizing authenticity and value. When considering algorithmic factors, the focus should be on how to best serve the audience, which in turn will naturally align with algorithmic preferences for engaging content. A continuous process of monitoring, analyzing, and adapting based on genuine audience response, rather than solely on perceived algorithmic hacks, is crucial for sustainable and ethical success. Question 18. Cost-benefit analysis shows that engaging in LinkedIn groups can significantly enhance professional networking and lead generation for a public relations firm specializing in financial services. However, the firm must carefully consider the regulatory implications of its online activities. Which of the following approaches best balances the benefits of LinkedIn group engagement with the imperative of regulatory compliance? Option A. Actively participate in relevant LinkedIn groups by sharing industry insights, thought leadership content, and engaging in general discussions about financial markets and public relations best practices, while strictly avoiding any direct or indirect promotion of specific investment products or services. Option B. Share speculative news and rumors about upcoming market movements or potential investment opportunities within LinkedIn groups to generate buzz and attract attention to the firm's expertise. Option C. Recommend specific investment funds or products to group members that the firm believes are performing well, framing these recommendations as helpful suggestions to aid their investment decisions. Option D. Use LinkedIn groups primarily as a direct sales channel to solicit clients for the firm's investment advisory services, highlighting potential returns without explicit risk disclosures. The correct answer is A. Actively participate in relevant LinkedIn groups by sharing industry insights, thought leadership content, and engaging in general discussions about financial markets and public relations best practices, while strictly avoiding any direct or indirect promotion of specific investment products or services. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires navigating the delicate balance between leveraging professional networking platforms like LinkedIn groups for business development and adhering to strict regulatory frameworks governing public relations and financial promotions. The core challenge lies in ensuring that all communications, even within seemingly informal group settings, remain compliant with disclosure requirements and avoid misleading statements, particularly when discussing investment-related topics. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between general professional discussion and regulated financial advice or promotion. The correct approach involves actively participating in relevant LinkedIn groups by sharing insights, answering questions, and engaging in discussions that align with the public relations firm's expertise, while strictly avoiding any direct or indirect promotion of specific investment products or services. This approach ensures that the firm builds its reputation and network organically through valuable content and genuine engagement, without crossing the line into regulated activities. Regulatory justification stems from the principle of transparency and the prohibition of unlicensed financial promotion. By focusing on general industry knowledge and thought leadership, the firm remains within the bounds of permissible public relations activities, avoiding the need for specific financial services licenses or disclosures that would be triggered by promoting investment opportunities. This aligns with the spirit of regulations designed to protect the public from unqualified financial advice and misleading promotions. An incorrect approach of actively recommending specific investment products or funds within LinkedIn groups, even if framed as helpful advice, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This constitutes unlicensed financial promotion, which is a serious offense under financial services regulations. It bypasses necessary disclosures, risk warnings, and suitability assessments required for regulated financial advice, potentially exposing individuals to inappropriate investment risks. Another incorrect approach of using LinkedIn groups solely for direct sales pitches or lead generation for specific investment services, without proper disclaimers or adherence to financial promotion rules, is also problematic. This can be perceived as aggressive marketing and may violate consumer protection laws and ethical guidelines for professional conduct, as it prioritizes commercial gain over client welfare and regulatory compliance. A third incorrect approach of sharing unverified or speculative information about investment opportunities, even if not directly recommending them, can lead to market abuse and reputational damage. This fails to uphold the professional duty of care and the requirement for accuracy and fairness in all communications. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct above all else when using social media for networking. This involves a thorough understanding of the specific regulations applicable to their industry and jurisdiction, particularly concerning financial promotions and client advice. Before posting any content, professionals should ask, does this content constitute financial advice or promotion? And are all necessary disclosures and disclaimers in place? If there is any doubt, it is prudent to err on the side of caution and seek legal or compliance advice. The focus should always be on providing value through expertise and insights, building relationships based on trust, and maintaining transparency, rather than on immediate commercial outcomes that could jeopardize regulatory standing. Question 19. Examination of the data shows that a recent TikTok campaign achieved a significant increase in views and likes, but a notable decrease in comment sentiment analysis and a plateau in share rates. Which approach best reflects responsible public relations practice in reporting these TikTok analytics? Option A. Highlight the high view and like counts as evidence of broad reach, and suggest that comment sentiment and share rates are less important metrics for TikTok campaigns. Option B. Report the increase in views and likes as primary indicators of campaign success, while downplaying the decrease in comment sentiment and stagnant share rates. Option C. Emphasize the decrease in comment sentiment and stagnant share rates as critical failures, suggesting the campaign was largely unsuccessful despite the high view and like counts. Option D. Focus the report on the positive trends in views and likes, but also highlight the decrease in comment sentiment and stagnant share rates, offering potential explanations and suggesting adjustments to content strategy to improve these metrics. Correct answer is B. Report the increase in views and likes as primary indicators of campaign success, while downplaying the decrease in comment sentiment and stagnant share rates. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations professional to interpret TikTok analytics and engagement metrics in a way that is both effective for campaign strategy and compliant with ethical communication standards, without misrepresenting performance or engaging in deceptive practices. The pressure to demonstrate success on a popular platform like TikTok can lead to a temptation to overemphasize vanity metrics or to draw conclusions that are not fully supported by the data, potentially misleading stakeholders. Careful judgment is required to balance the desire for positive reporting with the obligation for accuracy and transparency. The correct approach involves focusing on metrics that demonstrate genuine audience connection and campaign objective achievement, such as comment sentiment analysis, share rates, and conversion tracking, if applicable, and contextualizing these within the broader campaign goals. This approach aligns with ethical public relations principles of honesty and accuracy. Specifically, by prioritizing metrics that reflect meaningful interaction and impact on objectives, the professional adheres to the core tenet of providing truthful and transparent reporting to stakeholders. This demonstrates a commitment to demonstrating the value of PR efforts through substantive engagement rather than superficial numbers, which is crucial for building trust and credibility. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on follower growth without considering engagement quality or the source of that growth fails to provide a holistic view of campaign effectiveness. This can lead to a misallocation of resources and an inaccurate perception of success. Ethically, it borders on misrepresentation by highlighting a metric that, in isolation, does not necessarily translate to meaningful impact or audience connection. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes likes and views above all else, without analyzing comment sentiment or share rates, overlooks the deeper aspects of audience engagement. While likes and views are indicators of reach and initial interest, they do not necessarily reflect genuine resonance or advocacy. Relying on these vanity metrics can lead to a skewed understanding of audience perception and campaign success, potentially masking underlying issues with content strategy or audience targeting. This can be seen as a failure to provide a comprehensive and accurate assessment of campaign performance. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of campaign objectives before analyzing any data. The PR professional must then select analytics that directly correlate with these objectives. They should critically evaluate the meaning of each metric, considering its limitations and potential for misinterpretation. Furthermore, they must always maintain a commitment to transparency and honesty in reporting, ensuring that all presented data is contextualized and accurately reflects the campaign's performance, avoiding any form of exaggeration or selective reporting. Question 20. Assessment of a public relations campaign's effectiveness on Facebook, considering the platform's algorithm and content distribution, requires a strategic approach that balances organic reach with paid amplification. Which of the following approaches best aligns with ethical public relations practices and regulatory expectations for transparent communication in the United States? Option A. Focusing solely on maximizing the use of trending hashtags and keywords, regardless of content relevance, to achieve broad visibility and assuming the algorithm will naturally distribute the content to interested users. Option B. Prioritizing the creation of highly shareable, engaging content tailored to specific audience segments, utilizing relevant hashtags strategically, and supplementing organic reach with targeted paid promotion to ensure content reaches its intended audience. Option C. Employing a network of inauthentic accounts to artificially inflate likes, shares, and comments on client posts to demonstrate high engagement metrics to stakeholders. Option D. Investing heavily in paid promotion for all content, even if it lacks inherent audience value or engagement potential, with the primary goal of creating an illusion of widespread organic popularity. The correct answer is B. Prioritizing the creation of highly shareable, engaging content tailored to specific audience segments, utilizing relevant hashtags strategically, and supplementing organic reach with targeted paid promotion to ensure content reaches its intended audience. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because public relations practitioners must navigate the opaque nature of social media algorithms, like Facebook's, to effectively distribute content while adhering to ethical communication standards and regulatory guidelines. The dynamic and often unpredictable shifts in algorithm prioritization mean that strategies must be adaptable and grounded in principles of transparency and audience value, rather than solely on exploiting perceived loopholes. Misinterpreting or attempting to manipulate algorithmic behavior can lead to unintended consequences, including reduced reach, audience distrust, and potential regulatory scrutiny if deceptive practices are employed. The correct approach involves a deep understanding of audience behavior and content engagement metrics, using this data to inform content creation and distribution strategies that align with Facebook's stated goals of fostering meaningful interactions. This means prioritizing authentic, valuable content that resonates with the target audience, thereby naturally encouraging engagement that the algorithm is designed to reward. This approach is ethically sound and compliant with general principles of fair communication, as it focuses on providing value to the audience rather than on deceptive tactics. While specific U.S. regulations for social media PR are still evolving, the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, guidelines on endorsements and deceptive advertising are highly relevant. These guidelines emphasize truthfulness and transparency. By focusing on genuine audience engagement through valuable content, practitioners avoid any implication of artificial inflation of reach or engagement, which could be construed as deceptive. An incorrect approach that focuses on gaming the algorithm through excessive use of trending hashtags without regard for content relevance or audience interest is professionally unacceptable. This tactic, while potentially offering short-term visibility, fails to build genuine audience connection and can lead to content being perceived as spammy or irrelevant, ultimately diminishing its long-term impact and potentially violating ethical standards of audience respect. Furthermore, if such tactics are used to artificially inflate engagement metrics to mislead stakeholders about campaign effectiveness, it could verge on deceptive practices, drawing scrutiny under FTC guidelines. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes paid promotion over organic reach, even for content that lacks inherent audience value, is also professionally unsound. While paid promotion is a legitimate tool, its misuse to artificially boost low-quality content can lead to wasted resources and a perception of inauthenticity. If the intent is to create a false impression of organic popularity or widespread appeal, this could be seen as misleading. A third incorrect approach that involves creating multiple fake accounts to artificially boost engagement on a client's posts is a clear violation of Facebook's terms of service and constitutes deceptive practice. This is not only unethical, but also carries significant legal risk, as it directly misrepresents audience engagement and can be considered fraudulent. Such actions would undoubtedly fall foul of FTC guidelines concerning deceptive advertising and endorsements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a continuous cycle of audience research, content strategy development, performance analysis, and ethical review. Practitioners must stay informed about platform updates and best practices, always prioritizing authentic engagement and audience value. When considering any strategy, the core question should be, does this approach genuinely serve the audience and provide them with value, or is it primarily designed to manipulate the platform for superficial gain? This ethical filter, combined with an understanding of relevant regulatory principles like those from the FTC, ensures that public relations efforts are both effective and responsible.